My name is Andrew Allred. I'm a Senior Vice President with the Grinza Blacklear, and today I have the pleasure of hosting the What You Always Want to Know About Annual Giving webinar. I have two of my favorite people with me, Kim Mougenel and Jayanne Savast. I've had the pleasure of, they've been clients, they've been friends, and Kim and I have been colleagues. So we've worked together for a while, which we promise not to go to all inside jokes or anything with that. Or we promise to try not to, but we will do that. But today we're going to talk about what they wanted to know when they started their career in annual giving, what they've learned, how they've done that. Kim is the Director of Prospect Management. Kim, I always miss that next part, but Director of Prospect Management for the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute in Boston, Massachusetts. And Jayanne is the Senior Director of Philanthropy at Kutztown University in Pennsylvania. So we're going to just kind of have fun with this. We thank you for submitting some questions in advance. So we're going to throw a few of those in for this. If you have questions at the end, we will certainly, we can't take those live, but we'll give you email addresses and one or all three of us will respond to you. So just feel free to send it that way. But we're going to end with key takeaways for annual giving in the future as we're coming out of the pandemic year, and it changed everything, as you know. So we'll talk about that as well. Housekeeping wise, we'll go for about 30 minutes, and please mute yourself if you're not already muted, and we should go from there. So we'll start. Jayanne, I want to introduce you first. Ask you to tell us a little bit about your program, and then, you know, as the title says, I would be remiss if we didn't start off with what's the one thing you wish you knew about annual giving before you started.
Sure. So thanks, Andrew, for inviting me to be here today. And Kim and I actually worked together as well. So we are, we've all sort of known each other. So this is a good opportunity to talk about some of the things that we love, which is annual giving. So I'm at Kutztown University, and we are one of the 14 public Pennsylvania Association state system of higher education universities. And we have just under 8,000 students and 70,000 alumni worldwide. And our foundation is building an annual giving program. And our goals are, we're working towards consistently raising $500,000 a year in our annual dollars. And then overall, our foundation has raised just over 9 million this year and counting. So if I think about, what I wish I had known in annual giving coming in, I think it would be that I wish I had known that I could definitely make a career out of annual giving. I came from alumni relations when I first started in annual giving, and I sort of felt as if, everybody only talked about like the next natural step was to go into major gifts. And I wasn't sure that I wanted to do that. And I know now that that's not the full-time responsibilities that I seek. But, I also didn't know if you could really make this a full-time gig and continue to grow and learn and take on progressively more responsibilities. And I know now that that certainly isn't the case.
Yeah. Fantastic. Kim, same question to you.
Well, thanks again, Andrew, for inviting me for this webinar. This is great. My favorite topic as well. So I am the Director of Prospect Management within Annual Giving at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. So we are a $30 million annual giving program, which is quite large comparatively to other organizations. And we're really comprised of 3 pillars. The first is direct marketing, which is anchored in, direct mail, social, digital. The second is special programs, and the third is prospect management. And that's my group. We're about 18 fundraisers from the Boston and Palm Beach office that are focused on working with individuals and frontline fundraising. And I think, similar to Jayanne, I think that's the one thing that I wish that I knew when I first started out in annual giving. I actually started in annual giving in the early 2000s at Dana-Farber. And I was always told it was just a stepping stone to get into major gifts. And over the course of my career, I really realized that there's so much variety to the program, whether it's, from looking at data to doing marketing to stewardship. That's really kept me interested over the course of my career. There's always something new technology always coming up. So it's been quite rewarding.
That's fantastic. And it's good to hear that from both sides. I mean, from both of you, because there's a great future in annual giving as you go through. Kim, first question to you. What role do you see annual giving playing in a major advancement shop? You've got a huge annual giving fund right there, but what role does it play? And, why is it more than just the annual fund, which so many people think it is?
It's a good question. I think it has a connotation of a transaction, annual giving. And for us, it's more than transactional philanthropy, because when we meet with a donor, we're really looking about their giving holistically. I mean, if we can impress upon them the importance of giving to annual giving and giving to the unrestricted funds, that's great. But if we can also talk to them about things that might happen in their lifetime that could influence further or different kinds of giving in the future, it's even better. So if they have a windfall, if they have recently drafted their estate plans, if they have an inheritance, those are all kind of points across the lifetime of a donor that we want to impress upon them. It's really great to, think about us more than just, giving to the annual appeal.
That's great. Jan, you're at a university where the annual fund is king and people talk about that, but how do you take focus? Don't diminish your annual fund, but how do you let everybody realize that you're bigger than that?
Yeah. So, when I think of annual giving, like I often will say we're community builders. We are connectors. And I think a lot of times maybe that's my alumni relations background showing as well. But, we really, as Kim said, have the opportunity to introduce giving and to make it comfortable and, relatable and achievable for so many of our constituents. We're really helping to kind of build that foundation and identify those passions, and through, that collective community support of those gifts, we can have a much larger impact. And so, we are talking right now, as I'm sure a lot of our participants today are, about those unrestricted funds versus the restricted funds, and wrestling with how we will move forward doing business. But I always go back to, we are in annual giving those immediate first connectors, and can really keep people connected throughout all of those touch points, maybe that Kim mentioned, the different lifetimes, and show the impact of their support in a really large way.
That's great. So next question, I'm just going to throw to Jan again. Fundraisers and data analytics managers, you speak the same language, but there's a very different meaning sometimes in their individual units with that. So how do you best communicate with each other? Because in a program like yours with Phonathon and things, you have to be able to be on the same page all the way through.
Sure. So I have been fortunate to work with some really, really incredible data managers and teams along the way in my career. And, I really would recommend that you have to start with that common language and the terms that you do speak. So, really hammering out and confirming that you're on that same page about what it means to be a LIBUNT or what a lapsed donor means. Because if you're new to the field, or you're coming from another institution, those can mean very, very different things to different people. And you just want to make sure you're really having those conversations to say, wait, are we talking about the same thing? And then from there, I always am really known to say, so here's what I want to do, or here's what I want to examine, or here's what I want to figure out. How can we get there? Or what am I missing? So, submitting that standard data request just isn't enough. It often will spark more questions. And a lot of times there might be, sort of this back and forth. And then, you could ultimately end up both very frustrated in the process because you're not really getting to the question. So, really taking the time to invest and say, this is what I want to do, but I'm not sure how to get there with some of the words you're speaking, I think will just set you up for success in building that good relationship and, trusting and going from there.
That's very true. It's always a challenge, but it's a fun challenge once you conquer it. Kim, in a shop, a big shop like Dana-Farber, especially, we run into this probably in every shop, but Dana-Farber, for instance, there are so many entry points for donors because you have events, you have annual giving, plan giving, major gifts. How do you collaborate between all the parties to make sure that you're not tripping all over each other and, irritating the donor by all being there at the same time?
So I think one thing we do really well at Dana-Farber is we have strong organizing principles. So we know, when a gift comes in, it's not going to spark a whole new conversation about what we should do with it. We typically follow kind of agreed upon business rules that can easily help us navigate with the donor. But I also think we have to, back to Jayan's point, we really have to acknowledge the level of expertise that sits across the organization and really find out, what is the best place for this donor to land and what do we think the path forward is for them. So whether it's, meeting with the IT folks, meeting with our data folks, or meeting with plan giving, just really understanding the most, the biggest expertise that you can figure out for the donor.
Great. So this is to both of you. This is one of our first question from the audience, so to speak. But what's the top tip you would give a new fundraising professional who are just really dipping their foot into annual giving?
So I surveyed my team for this because it's been a while. And I think one of the biggest things that I was hearing is that really just talking with donors, that is the best tip that you can give to someone in annual giving, whether they're working on direct marketing or if they're frontline. You really have to understand, what the donors are responding to, why they support your organization, and what you can do to help encourage that moving forward. So, if you're at a higher ed institution, going down to the phone-a-thon and making some calls, or, even making some thank you calls if you're not that comfortable with making solicitations. But I think getting that, the discipline of getting on the phone and talking to donors, I think is something that will serve well in a career in annual giving.
Jan?
Yeah, so I mean, to go with that, I would say, digging through the files and digging through, and not your donor files. I'm talking like the files that maybe are left from your predecessor, or, seeing what appeals have gone out, talking with your colleagues in marketing or communications, in alumni relations, in, database land, to see what's been done, because you may have a really fantastic idea and think you are, oh my gosh, I'm bringing this really innovative idea and concept in, and only to learn that it had been tried and fell flat, or had sort of landed in a completely different direction. So, take a little bit of time, read up. The other thing I would say is really looking at, your organizations, if you have a style guide in terms of communications, because I think that can really give you a good sense of the types of language or expectations that there are in terms of appeals, what the look and feel of them might really need to be. And investing that time at the front end will save you a lot of trouble on the editing end as well.
That's great. You've both been in this a number of years, and we won't say how many, but you've both been in a number of years. Annual giving's evolved, and the depth of it has evolved. So, Jayan, what's the best change you've seen, and what do you see with that as you move forward?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people would argue that annual giving, still that annual appeal, that mail, is kind of not dead. I think the best change is all of the technology that we have available. Technology has really evolved to allow us to better target and examine, our donors and to take a look, in the ways like the Amazon or any other retailer is doing, how to best reach them. There is a caution with that though. I think maybe there's sometimes too much technology, and you may not need to always have everything to have a strong, successful annual giving program. So really looking at those things. But I mean, the fact that there are so many tools and tricks, it's mind blowing, honestly, because we did not have that when I started out.
Kim, same question.
Similar thought. I think, having the data analysis on the back end has been, brought the program forward so much further than, without it. So when we do modeling on certain segments, when we test that model to ensure that we're targeting the right people, I think that's really helping us kind of really focus in to ensure that with our large prospect pools that we're reaching the right people and, and talking to them in the way that they prefer to be talked to.
That's great. I'm reading some of the questions that are coming in, so keep them coming. If we don't get them, we will certainly get back to you on that. So please put your name if you need that. Data, there's so much data available, and there's so much, there's more technology available. There is data available with technology. So how do you use data in figuring out your ask and seeing how the donors feel and ultimately driving your program? Kim.
So recently we've actually looked at DonorScape data to ensure that we're asking for the right amount and seeing if there's opportunities to increase that ask. So we're testing that out. I think that's what's so great about annual giving is that it's, you've got a large population to work with that you can test things out, see if they work, see if your hypothesis is correct, and move forward that way. So, that's one way that we've been looking at it. There's multiple models that we have that look at, if a donor is a stock donor or a donor advised fund donor, if they look like our normal President's Circle, which is our Leadership Giving Society donor, and trying to ensure that we can pick those folks out from the mass of our annual fund.
Jan, how do you and sort it and work with it that way?
Sure. So, I mean, taking a combination of what Kim has mentioned, and then also I know there's a few questions that have come in about, do you ask for a specific amount? And this is something that we've been actually doing at Kutztown since I came in, looking at that ask array. We always do ask for a specific amount. We do this with our engagement center. So our engagement center is our traditional phone-a-thon students. We always do ask for a set amount, but what we've been recently trying is going back after those appeals go out and seeing what amount they actually gave. A lot of times that's sort of the missing piece, because you get caught up in, okay, I need to work on the next appeal and I need to work on the next campaign and the next project. So we take a little time and look at that. And what we were able to find out was, like last year, for example, on some of our major appeals, people were giving that amount. So this year we're asking for just a little nudge up, and we're going to go back and look at it. So, as Kim said, it's a lot of testing and experimentation because we're able to do that. And then, really going back and re-examining whether or not that works. And for that particular appeal at that particular time.
Do you see that feeding major gift pipelines?
I do. So for me, I think, major gift pipelines really, are important. We're fortunate, we have been in a quiet phase of a campaign now for a while, as I'm sure many of our participants are. Very secret, top secret. So we've been really honing our messaging and looking at that, and then also investing on the stewardship side. So, not just annual giving, but taking that data, and someone who shows up out of the blue with a response to a direct mail appeal with a gift that's significantly larger than what they've done before. that usually raises a flag and has someone do some follow-up. So yeah, we are able to identify through our loyalty givers or some of those who are having big increases and using the data tools that Kim recommended to really help look for that pipeline, to major gifts and move folks along the way with our leadership society or some other opportunities.
That's great. So question to both of you. This is one coming in from email. The writer says it's not uncommon for board of trustees, senior leaders to annually increase annual giving goals to raise more and more funds, which of course, but keeping this reality in mind, does the director of annual giving ensure a balanced workload among teammates and a manageable workload for the team? So how do you take an ever increasing goal with a not ever increasing staff and make it happen?
I think it's true for any position, is really looking at what you have in front of you and figuring out what your priorities are, and then bringing them back to the director and saying, okay, this is what I'm understanding as the priorities, and this is what else has come on my plate. Would you agree that these are priorities? But I think especially with so many tools and campaigns and things that we can use to lift the levers of our donors, I think sometimes a board might hear that an organization is doing one thing and we should be doing that. So that's where I think the conversation really has to happen, to ensure that you can get your foundational work done and then approach these new opportunities as they come. I'm a big fan of blocking out time to work on your prospect work, because if you're not blocking it out, someone else is going to grab that time on your calendar. So, all of the gift officers on our team, they do a really good job of making sure that they can carve some time that they can just focus on prospect work. And if you treat it like a meeting, then you're going to get that work, that essential work and conversations with donors, you're going to get it done.
I love that. Jan, another question that's come in is about segmentation. What's your favorite way that you have found to segment? Live hunt, hybrids, previous giving, any of that stuff. What do you think is the most successful, if there is a most successful?
Yeah, so not to sort of cop out of this answer, but it does depend on your institution. And so, going back to what I said, like really digging into a little bit of history, and before you get really going, my current favorite method is really to look at that history. So, it's a lot easier to get a renewed donor along the way than it is to go out and sort of canvas for those new donors. So what we have been relying on in our program is really utilizing our student callers to focus on that acquisition for us, leveraging our giving day for our acquisition elements, and then utilizing our direct mail and our email in a complementary way so that we're able to renew that support from those long, leverage that history and tradition of giving and start to build it in those newer donors as well. So we rely really heavily on past support to really do that segmentation. I do play a little bit with age. So, our recent graduates, I will perhaps target in a different way or with a first outreach than I would maybe some of our more established donors. And then similarly also on allocation. So looking at those unrestricted donors and even just sorting the order and playing with the order on their response mechanisms for what funds appear first to them. So I like to mix it up a little bit.
A related question with this is style-wise. Annual giving used to be phone-a-thon and mail. That was it. Then there's text. Then there's thank you. There's all these other things. So do you find one is better than the other, or old ways are better, new ways are better?
Well, I would say in the past year, we've gotten a lot of people on the phone, more than ever. And I am concerned moving into the summer that we're not going to get as many people on the phone as things open up and people aren't home and they're going away. So it does depend. I also think that, you'll find with a gift officer, they'll choose or they'll find which works best for the donor and then use that as the response mechanism. So if someone's used to just, quickly shooting an email, then they'll stick with that path. But we try all sorts. I think, lots of people have gotten lots of email over the last year. So we've had to stick out a little bit, use the phone, try to use, regular mail just to get visits with donors. I think standing out and determining, how to get that person's attention has been a focus for us.
Kim, that was a great segue to our last two questions. But, last year changed all of us. It personally, professionally, everything about what we did changed. There's plenty of other opportunities to dwell on it all, but I will ask each of you, what did you do in your programs you're most proud of that you will take forward when we're back in a quote unquote regular world? Jan?
Yeah, so for us, I'm most proud that we took a little pause. So, our original Giving Day was scheduled for April of 2020, and we decided to postpone that. And for us, that was the right decision for our constituents and everything. And what we did was then refocus our energies into the fall. What we learned is that the fall is actually better for us. So we're going to continue with that moving forward because it allows us to get those gifts in the door early. It means then that the recipients of those Giving Day funds are able to utilize them faster. And it also frees up on our appeals calendar a little bit more time in the spring to be creative and delve a little bit deeper into some of those special projects, those things that we want to experiment or try to do. So I think that's the biggest thing I've learned. I think the other thing that we learned the most was that we actually went out and did this in partnership with GG&A and the survey lab. We did a survey and we asked about our donors and their feelings of whether, the pandemic had impacted how they plan to participate. And what we found out was that it gave us that green light to go back to asking. So we could stop a little bit sooner than maybe we would have if it was done without data behind that decision, and go back into thoughtful solicitations and appeals.
Kim, what about you?
So for us, we followed my boss's mantra from Finding Nemo of just keep swimming. And we had our first ever Giving Day, May of last year. And really wrapped our fundraising around emergency response fund and COVID-19 relief, and went out there to donors with a case that, cancer doesn't stop during a pandemic and we need to keep on moving forward. And we actually raised over 500,000 in this effort, which was tremendous. And we are in a campaign. We launched a campaign on Monday, a $2 billion campaign. And I don't believe that we would have been able to find the success that we've had so far if we paused all of our fundraising. I think coming out, being bold and innovative and working with our donors and listening to them really helped us achieve our goals for, having some emergency response funds for the Institute, but then also carrying on our core mission.
That's great. And we're seeing similar patterns. People are really loving, what they did and how they took it away. So the last question, and this is sort of a flip, and we've maybe answered it, and Kim, you're not allowed to answer it with keep swimming. So I'll just tell you that now, but flipping the title a little bit, what's the one thing you think anyone who works in annual giving should know? Your tip for success for the professional, for the person who has been in it for a while.
Kim, do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
Sure.
He was going to say keep swimming.
I'm trying to think of other ways to say it. I think, continue to be bold and innovative. And that's what annual giving, that's why it's so exciting, because we can do new things. You know, we changed up our Palm Beach annual fundraising gala to a virtual event and raised nearly as much money as we did at the actual event. So I think it just gave us a little bit more confidence to continue to try new things. And I think that's where annual giving is so much fun, because you do have the bandwidth to do that.
Jan?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that someone in annual giving, like, you really need to be able to understand how it all flows together. So, the donors aren't yours, they're your institutions or your organizations. And in a lot of ways, I think we can get caught up in that, success mentality of, well, I want to credit them to this appeal and I want to show the success of this effort. And really, it doesn't matter whether they fall into the annual giving pipeline or that crediting into this annual appeal or a major gift pipeline or a non-donor pool. Like, they're all part of that equation, and really knowing that, I think, is absolutely essential. How does all of this flow together? And then, once you know that, you can sort of experiment with that ebb and flow. Someone might be in a major donor mindset and pipeline and sort of track at one point, and they might then come back, and recognizing that it all ebbs and flows is really going to make you successful in the end, no matter where you are, big shop, small shop, nonprofit, higher ed, healthcare, all of it. It's the same everywhere. You just have to get the greater understanding, I think.
That's fantastic. So we have hit our time. We're a minute over what I promised. I think I said about, though. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you to both of you. It's always good to see each of you, but thank you for sharing your knowledge on this. There are questions that have come through that we just could not get to. So we'll divide them up. We'll see who's the best, but you'll hear from one of us in a few days, 4 days, something like that. But Jayan's actually on vacation, so she may be a little bit longer, but thank you so much. Enjoyed it. And everyone with us, thanks for joining us, and have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks.